today I've got a canning project. I'm going to be canning up some elk meat. I had to clean out the freezer and free up some space as my husband is bow hunting as we speak, and I need to make room for the harvest. And so I pulled out the elk meat from his last elk hunt, and I'm going to can that meat up, and then it'll make fast food for us this winter, easy stuff for him to have on the go and make an easy meal. So that being said, let's get to cutting up some elk meat. And if this inspires you to stay with me, and I hope it does, go down in that show more box below and check out my Wild Tree website, my Linda's Pantry Facebook page. Go over there and see who's talking and join in on that conversation. And also, share some videos with us over there. I've also got Zacon Foods. I've got their website still linked in the description box because I want you to go take advantage of cheaper prices on good quality meats across the country, and it's free to register. So I don't work for them, I'm just helping you guys out. So hopefully you go over and visit my Wild Tree website and stay along for the video. I'm going to try to cover as much of canning as I can because I do have a lot of new subscribers since last year and the last canning project, and I want to make sure I cover it. So if you've heard it before, just fast forward, I guess. All right, guys, let's go do some meat canning. Come on. Okay, guys, so I've got my canners with water in them, and what I do when I bring my canners out, make sure you can see this, is look through that hole and make sure that this is moving up and down, because that's your pressure valve. But that hole, you should be able to see daylight through it and actually put a toothpick through that. If it gets clogged up with minerals and debris, you could have a problem. You also want to make sure that your rubber gaskets are in good shape so you can get a good seal. So I inspect that, I fill it to the fill line that's inside the canner, and I put a big splash, probably a third of a cup of vinegar, just plain white vinegar, in the pot as well. And I've got my meat over here. This is like semi-frozen, thawed out. By the time I get done cutting it all up, it'll all be completely thawed. I've got steaks, some stew meat. I've got one roast in here. They were all packaged up with butcher paper around them, like these steaks here. And I just undid them all so they would thaw faster in the fridge, because this one is still frozen and it's been out in the fridge since yesterday, about 24 hours. So that being said, it's easier to cut the meat up. There's no freezer burn on any of this meat, which is nice. That's why I use the butcher paper opposed to the doing it with the Food Saver. I have had a problem with the Food Saver in the past. I've had 2 or 3 different ones, and they've all had this problem where I'll seal my bags, they look great, I put them in the freezer, I go open the freezer a couple weeks later or even a month later and notice that the seal is broken, and now I have freezer burn. So especially on wild game meat, you don't want to waste any of it. So that being said, we're going to get our gloves on because I don't need my hands in this. And I like to put the gloves on and go ahead and wash my hands. Get any residue that might be on the outside of the gloves off, because you're dealing with, food. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to wash my hands, get some meat out, and get started cutting up, and I'll bring you back in a second. So I've got some of it, I'm defrosting. It's a little bit frozen, defrosting a little bit more in the microwave. But you can see how easy that just cuts right through that, just like that. Elk meat is a very lean protein, and obviously this is all organic. And just is fabulous to have in your diet. We try to eat as much game meat as we can. Well, this one's got a little bit more ice crystals in it. By the time I get all this cut up, the stuff will have thawed enough that I can get this in the jars, and I'm raw pack canning. I did find some tenderloin, so this would be the filet mignon of the elk, and I'm gonna have this for dinner. So I'm leaving that out of the mix. And so it's just as easy as that. I'm just gonna do it all like kind of like stew meat. It'll be nice because we can do crock pot meals with this. Just throw it in there. My husband won't have to think about how to do it. And the great item to go with a meal in a jar. All right, so I've got the meat all cut up, and as you can see, this is a pile of meat. This is a lot of meat. So I've got my jars here. I've washed them in the dishwasher. They do not have to be hot and sterilized because we're cold packing. But I do take each of my jars and really inspect because these jars have been used. So I take my finger without the gloves on and inspect this rim. Make sure there's no nicks. And I'm glad I do because right here, one has a little bitty nick in it. And it could cause, because it's just barely going into where the rim is, it could cause this jar to fail, which to me, that's a waste of 1.5 pounds of meat. So we don't want that to happen. So this jar is going in the, we'll repurpose it for dry goods because it'll be fine for that. All right, so now I've only got 7 of these left. So I just go around each one, make sure they're all good, and I've already done these, but I've got a little bowl of vinegar here. So after I pack the jars, and that's what I'm gonna do right now.
Right.
Yeah. And it's super, I mean, it's really probably one of the easiest canning processes to do. And you end up with this great result. You don't need to add water to this or anything. We're putting this cold meat in a cold canner. The only thing that I'm heating are the lids in rings. And I'm gonna push this down pretty good. I want these packed pretty tightly. And you wanna let go of any air pockets, try to get those out of the way. So I just work that meat down in there the best I can. And like I told you guys, this would completely finish the thawing process while I was doing this, and it has. So that's a nicely packed jar. There's some air pockets over here. I'm gonna try to figure out here. And make sure we've got all that out of there. And then I take my vinegar, wipe this down really good. And actually, you can put some salt in here if you want to. I really don't think it's necessary, but I'm going to, just for the sake of following the bulk canning instructions on canning meat. I'm going to use Himalayan pink salt though. I like everything low sodium, so I'm not going to put a whole teaspoon or even 1/2 teaspoon in there. And now we're going to go grab our lid and ring. And I have this over here, not boiling water, because you don't, but you want it to where your rubber gasket is soft, because that rubber gasket right there is what's gonna seal down and seat with your jar. Bring this to, make sure it's on there, finger tight, and that's it. I'm gonna put this meat in the canner to rest, waiting for the rest of it, and we'll get moving. I'll bring you back when I have an idea of how many jars I've got. All right, so I ended up with, it was 20.5 pounds of meat, I figured, because your quart jars will hold 2 pounds, and the 1.5 jars will hold 1 pound or 1.5 pounds. I chose, because I knew I was gonna have to do another batch if I decided to use pint jars, and that was kind of my original plan. I had more meat than I thought, so I decided to go ahead and can it up in quart jars, which is just fine. We'll use it just the same. So we're canning 6 quarts and 7 1.5 size jars in the other canner, and just beautiful. So you put your, in here, I've already turned the burner on, but you put your cold jars in cold water, and you've inspected your lid, so this should slide on really well. It should just snap right in place. So now I'm gonna wait till this is vented through this vent hole. It'll come to a boil in there and it'll push all the air out, and you need to vent a steady stream for 10 minutes. Once that happens, we'll put the 15-pound weight, and that's according to my altitude. So depending on where you are altitude-wise, depends on what kind of weight you need on there. Please refer to the ball canning book whenever you're canning, especially canning meats. It's a low-acid food, and you have to do it properly to kill everything. Nothing's going to live through this pressure canning process. So as long as it's done right, it's just a healthier, inexpensive version. A little tiny can of roast beef costs $2, $3, $4 in the store. Even chicken is the same. So I encourage you to start canning. Okay, I'll bring you back when this is venting and show you what that looks like. All right, so now I've got venting going. You need that steady stream of steam coming out of that vent hole for 10 full minutes, okay? And that's what that should look like. Your back stopper, your pressure button, that is up and should stay up the whole time. This one's hard to see because of the light, but that one you can see that steam going. Okay, so this is the jiggle I'm looking for. Once that starts, you can start your timer. Timing 90 minutes, and then you'll shut your burner off and let it cool all the way down. This process, I usually set aside at least 4 hours of my day. Just because you've got to prep the meat, get it in the jars, all that stuff. And yeah, it's just a time-consuming thing. So I'm doing the floors and listening to a jiggle. Okay, so finally the canners have cooled down. The pressure is off. You want to make sure your button or whatever the pressure valve is down all the way. And then take your weight, and make sure, because sometimes, you could have a faulty valve. So make sure when you jiggle your weight that there's no steam coming out of there. Pull that off, no steam. Pull that off, no steam. But trust me, these canners are still very, very hot. So we want to make sure that when we open them, that we open away from our bodies. And then what I like to do is let the water drip inside the canner and not all over the place. I really like to let these kind of sit in the canner because they'll cool down kind of on their own for a few minutes. I don't want to shock these jars at all. If you shock them temperature wise, you could have a failed jar. So we're going to go ahead and open this away from us and give us another look. Wow. It smells amazing, actually. Really love the smell of canned beef, or actually all of it. It just makes for a great product. And this is canned elk. So you're going to set this down on your counter. You don't want to shock your counter or your jars with any temperature change. So I put a double layer of towels down, and these are the quart jars. And you can still see them boiling inside the jars. This gets up past the point of, it gets up to 240 degrees in these canners. So what happens is it kills botulism, all that. You want to make sure that you have enough airspace, and you don't want to jostle these jars for 24 hours. I'm going to leave some airspace in between them so they can seal. Any jars that might not seal, you would go ahead and leave out, put in the refrigerator. But the ones that I've got out here, I haven't had a non-seal in a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let these cool down on the counter on their own. And after 24 hours, I'll take these bands off and I'll wash and scrub these jars, make sure I have a good seal, and put the bands back on, and or you don't have to, but these are going to be traveling probably with my husband, so I will put the bands back on, and there you go, and store them in a cool, dark place for the next few years. And somebody's going to ask me, how long will this keep? Well, stored properly, it's kind of indefinite, but I would say, ooh, I heard a jar pop. I would say 2 to 7 years. Quality-wise, you know, 2 to 5 years quality-wise is going to be there. So, all right, guys. So we have a lot of elk meat. This is a little over 20 pounds of elk meat that I got canned up today. The jars are already sealing. You can still see how they're bubbling inside the jars. That's how hot this gets when you pressure can. And that's what keeps this, you know, safe to eat. When we buy cans of meat in a tin, we can't see what's inside. So this looks a little different to everybody, but trust me, it's delicious. It's a great way to save what you have. If this inspires you to come back, and I truly hope it does, I hope it inspires you to maybe start canning, or at least think about it and research how to do some of the things and put back what you've got and what you've harvested. And trust me, if you've got stuff in the freezer that needs to get used up, this is a great way to do it and extend the shelf life. So if this does inspire you, hopefully you'll give me a thumbs up. Go over and visit my Facebook page in the description box below, and all the other links that I've provided for you. And I've got an exciting video coming up to share what I've got going on next. So don't miss out, because it could be a great recipe. It could be a great announcement. Okay, guys, I'll see you next time.